The night was darker than usual, the kind of silence that made the highway feel endless. Emma kept both hands tightly on the steering wheel, her old second-hand car rumbling beneath her as she drove home from her late-night teaching job. She lived far from the city lights, in a quiet town where people lived modest lives, and she never expected anything extraordinary to happen to her. But fate always found its own way. Halfway down the long stretch of road, her headlights cut through the fog and caught a figure at the side of the road. A man. He was slumped over, barely standing, his white shirt torn and stained. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She told herself not to stop. It was dangerous, it could be a trap. But then she saw him stumble forward, almost collapsing. Her instincts as a kind soul, the same instincts that made her a beloved teacher to children, forced her to pull over. The gravel crunched beneath her tires as she stopped. Her pulse was racing as she rolled down the window just slightly. "Are you okay?" she called out. The man lifted his head. Even in the dim light, she could see his face, handsome, sharp, but weary. His eyes were intense, piercing, the kind of eyes that had seen too much. He opened his mouth, but only a hoarse whisper came out. "Help me." Emma quickly got out and rushed toward him, slipping one of his arms over her shoulders to support his weight. His body was heavy, strong, and she could feel the faint tremble of exhaustion running through him. "You need a hospital," she said. "No hospital," he rasped, gripping her arm with surprising strength. "Just anywhere safe." Emma hesitated but nodded, guiding him toward her car. She didn't know who he was, why he was here, or why he didn't want medical attention. But she couldn't abandon him. Once inside the car, she glanced at him again. In the faint light from her dashboard, his face looked familiar, as if she'd seen it before. Her mind scrambled through old news reports and whispers from the city. And then it hit her. This wasn't just any man. This was Adrian Blackwell, the billionaire CEO, the ruthless businessman whose name made entire industries tremble. He was infamous, a man feared by rivals, admired by some, but whispered about by many. Rumors swirled around him. He had enemies everywhere, he had destroyed families through hostile takeovers, and he was a man no one dared to cross. Emma's breath caught. She had a billionaire sitting weak and injured in her car, a man everyone feared, and she had no idea what had happened to him. She drove, her heart racing faster with every passing second. He leaned against the seat, his breathing shallow, yet his eyes never closed. He was watching her, studying her in silence. At one point, he spoke, his voice low but commanding even in weakness. "Why did you stop?" Emma glanced at him. "Because you needed help. Anyone would have." "Not anyone," he said, almost to himself. His gaze lingered on her, unreadable. "You're either very brave, or very foolish." Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Maybe both." She brought him to her small home, tucked away at the edge of town. It was nothing compared to his world of skyscrapers and luxury, but it was safe. She helped him inside, guided him to the couch, and brought him water. He drank slowly, his movements deliberate, controlled, even though his body looked like it was on the edge of collapse. As the minutes passed, his sharpness returned. She could feel the weight of his presence filling the room. Even bruised and exhausted, Adrian Blackwell radiated authority. He finally looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You know who I am," he said. Emma froze, then nodded slowly. "Yes, and you're not afraid." She swallowed. "Maybe I should be. But right now, you're just a man who needed help." For the first time, his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. His eyes softened, just for a fleeting second. Interesting. The night stretched on. Emma gave him a blanket, brewed tea, and tried not to stare at him as he sat on her couch like a shadow out of place in her simple home. He asked her questions, sharp and direct, about her life, her job, why she lived alone. She answered honestly, though part of her wondered why he even cared. Then, without warning, he asked, "Do you trust me?" Emma blinked, taken aback. "I don't even know you." "Good," he said, leaning back. "Keep it that way." But despite his words, something about the way he looked at her made her chest tighten. It wasn't just intensity, it was loneliness, the kind of loneliness that only someone at the very top could know. She realized then that underneath the ruthless reputation, Adrian Blackwell was still human. As dawn approached, Emma thought he would leave. But instead, he stood and looked at her with that commanding presence again. "You don't understand what you've done for me tonight," he said. "I owe you." "I wasn't expecting anything," she replied softly. "That's what makes it dangerous," he said. His eyes locked with hers, and for the first time, his voice dropped to something almost vulnerable. "But don't worry. I protect what's mine." Her breath hitched, unsure what he meant. Before she could respond, he stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm lightly, sending sparks racing through her veins. He lingered there for a moment, as though memorizing her face, before finally pulling back. The world outside would return soon, full of business wars, rumors, and enemies. But inside her small home, in that quiet moment, Emma realized she had seen a side of Adrian Blackwell no one else had. Not the feared billionaire, not the ruthless CEO, but a man who had bled, who had needed someone, who had let down his guard, if only for a night. She knew her life would never be the same. Because once you saved a man like Adrian Blackwell, you couldn't walk away. And deep down, she wasn't sure she wanted to.